Hello and welcome. I think everyone is starting to join now. It is so exciting to see you all.
Wow, loads of you there. That's great. Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Ace. It's really exciting for us to have an opportunity to share some of our passion and enthusiasm for ski touring with you all. And I think this being a winter without many ski lifts open, it's a great time to get into ski touring. So thank you to everyone again for joining us. Right, so we don't keep you waiting. I think we can just launch in. Are you ready, Emily?
Yeah, I think so. I think let's go for it.
Good one. Cool. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much to Arc'teryx UK for hosting this evening and giving us the opportunity to share with you some of our passion, insight, stories, and a bit of our knowledge about ski touring. So we're aiming to discuss ski touring in an inclusive way to encourage people to try it. It's also to highlight the various things that you should consider when you go ski touring. It isn't going to be a fully comprehensive session. We're not going to be educating you on all the skills that you need to venture into the backcountry, but it's more of an outline of the equipment that you need to get into ski touring and some of the knowledge that you require in order to be safe and have a great time in the mountains. And we'll also be able to point you in the direction of where to get some additional education and information as well. So first of all, ski touring, what is it? It is all, it's really about putting skins on the bottom of your skis so that they stick to the snow when you walk up, using skis with special bindings that allow you to go into walk mode. So you can walk up the hill, you can then take those skins off, clip your bindings in and ski down. That is what ski touring is all about.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think, one of the things that we wanted to say, like we don't want to scare anyone off trying it. I think we've got quite a lot of information that we want to kind of talk through and kind of start sharing this evening. But at the end of the day, it is just walking uphill on skis and then, skiing down, and it's totally about being fun. And, we're kind of going to hopefully touch upon like ways that you can kind of get into it and hopefully give you a bit more confidence to kind of go away from this and, maybe kind of point you out to some places that you can kind of get some more learning and things. So I guess we'll kind of start by introducing ourselves. So Amanda, do you want to kind of tell us about you and your ski touring journey?
Okay, so I learned to ski in Scotland as soon as I was able to walk. I went on and did quite a lot of ski racing. I was in the British ski team for a while. After I finished ski racing, I got into ski instructing and coaching. And that is when when I got into the ski instructing is when I tried ski touring for the first time and got into skiing off of the piste. Because when you're racing, it's very much about hard packed snow, often ice injected snow. So I stopped ski racing and totally got into the off piste and absolutely loved it, loved the ski touring. So I've got my European Mountain Safety Award, which allows me to take people ski touring and share the wonders of the mountains beyond the pistes with people. So Emily, can you tell us a little about you and your ski touring journey?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of like learnt to ski as a child, just on like family holidays. Like we would go to the Alps each year, like kind of, each Easter time. And actually, one of my earliest memories is when I was 2, almost 3, and we were on family skiing holiday, and my dad had one of those backpacks, and I got to go in the backpack for half an hour at the end of the day and do kind of 2 runs with mum and dad. And it was kind of, I'd like be there on dad's back and tell my mum to hurry up kind of thing. And I think that kind of just instilled like, a lifelong love of skiing in me. And But it was quite funny, like my kind of journey into kind of working in the mountains perhaps wasn't the most kind of conventional route. Like I did a little bit of racing at uni, kind of got accidentally roped into the race team just by virtue of skiing with some of them on the ski trip in my first year, and then actually ended up skiing quite a bit on dry slope. And some people are really rude about dry slope, but I actually really like it, because to me dry slope was just, I've always had fun on it. So yeah, and then after that, after uni, I went to London and I qualified as a chartered accountant. And then it was after that that I kind of realised that I love the mountains, and skiing was a way that I could spend time in there. And then that's kind of, I began my instructor journey then, really. So now I've done kind of 6 winters teaching, and teaching's been like an amazing, I've done a season in Japan, I've done seasons in Switzerland and France. Like it's it's been an awesome journey. And so I've also got my European Mountain Safety Award, and then in the summer, like I've got my Mountain Leader Award, and I'm training to do my International Mountain Leader as well. So I just love the mountains, and ski touring is kind of that. I don't know, I just love how you can be properly in the mountains, and it's off the beaten track, it's great.
And I think those are getting away from the people, getting away from the piste, and into the backcountry is really what motivates a lot of people to go ski touring.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also, so I've kind of done kind of a lot of like triathlon and things, and I actually quite like the kind of just the fitness element of it as well. And like, sometimes when I'm in the Alps, when I'm out teaching, like I'll actually just sometimes go up in the evening and just like maybe skin up a piste or something, just for something a bit different and a bit of a different way of moving, and kind of seeing the resort in a different light as well. Like I really like going up at like sunset and things. It's pretty special. I think one thing to say, sorry, if anyone's got any like comments or questions throughout at all, like if you just want to pop them in the chat, and we'll answer at stages throughout where we're discussing, but also we'll come and do questions at the end. So just feel free to just pop anything in the chat.
So ideally, so if we move on to getting started in ski touring then. So ideally, when you're getting into it, as like so many other things, it's good to go with more experienced people, perhaps friends or an instructor, a mountain guide, and that gives you an opportunity to learn from them. But maybe this isn't always possible to hire an instructor, or maybe you don't have friends that already ski tour. And in that case, what to look out for is there are some communities online and in person when we can, that you can join that actually allows you to get into ski touring with people. So British Backcountry is a Facebook group, and the Eagles Ski Club run lots of trips. And the Ski Club of Britain have an app and Facebook pages for lots of different resorts across Europe. And if you're keen to start on your own, quite a nice thing to do is to get the equipment and then try it out within the safety of a ski area. Like what Emily was saying, you can actually ski tour up pistes. So perhaps when the lifts are closed, you can ski tour up a piste. However, do watch out for piste bashers, because they can be quite dangerous at night. But however, there are also some resorts that have specific skinning tracks, so that allows you to get that entry level kind of trial at it. But what you want to be looking for is not too steep terrain to get started, not going too far, and making it easily accessible and within an avalanche controlled area. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go on and chat about some of the equipment. We love kit chat, so we will definitely get into that. So I'll hand over to you, Emily, to get us started with kit.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually both got piles of kit next to us, so we can do a bit of show and tell. But I think like one of the things that we did want to talk about is kind of, you know, the like obstacles to getting started. And I think, you know, kit is probably a really key barrier to entry, I guess, because it, you know, it is expensive and it's a big investment if you're, you know, if you're looking to get the full setup. So it's definitely worth thinking, like whenever you're starting out, like, you know, thinking about if you could borrow from friends or whatever, or if potentially you can hire equipment, just to kind of give it a go and see how much you like it before you actually, you know, start making the investments. And then, you know, when you are buying pieces, especially when you're starting out, like it's definitely worth considering secondhand stuff. I mean, I personally, my first two sets of touring gear was secondhand, like one off a friend and then the other one then off eBay.
My mum got a whole kit from a shop in Scotland that was selling off its ex-rental kit, and she got a whole setup from them directly.
Yeah, exactly. And as Amanda says, like, you know, like using ex-rental stuff it's a good way to kind of to get in. And, you know, especially say you're learning in Scotland, like, you know, the conditions in Scotland, quite often there might be some rocks underfoot and things. Like, you don't want to be too precious about your skis. Like, you probably don't want to go and buy like a full brand new setup and then go skiing in Scotland straight away. So, you know, just even like you could potentially just use it, like if you've got a pair of old piste skis or whatever, and then you just get some touring bindings put on them. But yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about kit for hours, so I'll try and make sure we don't ramble on too much. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth, like, you know, just thinking there are different forums that you can kind of where you can get extra advice, and, you know, speak to retailers, like, you know, speak to the ski shops and stuff. And, you know, if you go out to the Alps and you're in resort, like, you know, definitely speak to the hire shops and stuff. It's there's loads of options, loads of information out there. But I think we'll get on to skis first, you know, kind of the main thing to get into ski touring. Amanda's gonna start us off.
Okay, so skis. So if you are getting into ski touring, there are quite a lot of things to consider within the skis that you choose to take ski touring. Now, like Emily said, you don't need specific ski touring skis. However, if you're going to look at specific ski touring skis, you want to think about things like your height, your weight, your ability, your adventure goal, and the intended use that you're going to have for them. So we look, first of all, the length of ski that you might consider for your ski touring. Now it does depend on the type of ski touring that you want to do, your ability and your weight as to how long your skis are going to be. However, as a ballpark figure, we look at an all-round ski touring ski would be around 5 to 10 centimeters shorter than your height. So it's going to be around about here-ish on your face for the height that's going to be 5 to 10 centimeters shorter than you. If you want to be free riding, so that's focusing on the going down afterwards, you maybe want to go a bit faster, then your ski touring skis would be about the same height as you. So my ski touring skis that you see here behind me, they're about the same height as me. And then you can also consider if you want to go super light. So say you want to go up a bit faster, you want to maybe do a longer expedition or even a race, then you might want to look at super light ski touring skis. And that can be as much as 20 centimeters shorter than your height, in order to make them as light as possible.
And they're great for the up, but they're not so good for the down. But the length it's a big kind of, it does make a difference. Like, I mean, as I said, like, I bought my first 2 sets of touring skis secondhand, and they were both, I mean, I'm pretty short, so I'm 5'2", and both of the sets that I got were, you know, probably a bit higher than me. And so when I was on steeper terrain and getting into kick turns, like, it became quite difficult because I essentially was finding myself like lacking flexibility to get the length of the ski around. So having a shorter ski is definitely really, really helpful. And yeah, like my setup now is much shorter and great fun still.
Good. That is quite a consideration, is that how you get up and that you're able to maneuver your skis effectively. So then the other thing about skis is the width of them. So These days there's such a variety of widths of skis, and we tend to go wider for off-piste. Now for ski touring, I would recommend between 80 and 95 millimeters underfoot. 95 would be quite long, quite wide, sorry. Mine are 90, and I find that's perfectly wide enough for most conditions. However, if you're going super light, you're wanting to go up quickly, you're wanting to get as light skis as possible, you can look at a bit lower than 80 millimeters underfoot. But for general day-to-day ski touring, I wouldn't want less than 80 underfoot.
Yeah, I think it's also worth, like, you know, considering where you're going to use it. So I did a season in Japan, and Japan's like renowned for having like a lot of powder snow. And in Japan, I was ski touring on, like, I think mine were maybe 110 underfoot, which is like the widest skis I've ever skied on kind of thing. But that's just because you want a larger surface area because you're on more powder snow. But in the Alps, my setup now is 88 underfoot, and that does me perfectly. That's kind of, it's still fun in powder, but whenever you've got slightly more hard packed snow, like, I've got control of my skis, and that's spot on, I think.
Yeah, so we're around about the same then, 88, 90.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're getting very specific ski touring skis, they're going to be a bit lighter. So that is all about skis. If you have any other ski questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we'll try and answer them as soon as we can. Now, another part of the equipment to do with skis is, I've got my skis here, is the skins. Now, that is what you stick to the bottom of your base. So these are stuck with glue on the bottom of the skins, and that sticks to my base. And the skin allows you to move up the slope, because if I stroke the skin this way, that's as though you were going to be moving up the slope. And then it moves quite easily that way. It's quite soft, it's smooth. However, they're like stroking a dog. If you're going to go backwards this way, it sticks quite a lot. So what that means is when you step on them and you push back, it sticks into the snow. So these are skins. Now, what's a good idea to do is to get skins that are a European brand if you're going to be skiing in Europe. Because they are going to be more suited to European snow conditions. And there are some different types of skins, but I tend to get a mixed one. And what's really important is that they are fitted well to your skis. If you look at the bottom here, there is a strap that goes over the bottom of my ski, and they narrow in a little bit, but generally they're just narrower than the edges of my skis, so my edges can still stick into the snow. So you can get skins that are specific for ski touring skis, or you can also get skins that can be cut to fit your skis by a ski shop, but you can also cut them at home. But if you're cutting them at home, make sure you read the instructions a few times before you start, because once they're cut, that's it.
Once they're cut, yeah.
You've got different types of skins there.
Yeah, so I've got, these ones are my ones for my normal touring skis. I mean, they're green, they're quite nice, they fit to my, so these are for my skis that are the 88 underfoot. But then I've also got these ones which are really narrow, you see, and these are for those, I mean, these are just bands around them. But so I've got a set of proper uphill skinny ski mountaineering skis, basically because I was meant to be doing a ski mountaineering race this year, but you know, COVID. So I've got a super light setup, and that's why these ones are so thin, is because they're on my little skinny skis, which are good for the up but not very pleasant for skiing on, if I'm perfectly honest.
And a couple of points I wanted to point out about skins, is the maintenance of them is super important. So make sure that you dry them out after you use them. Think about re-gluing them. Sometimes that sticky bit that goes onto the base sometimes can lose its grip, so you can actually reapply glue. And then with older skins, the actual skin part, sometimes what happens is the snow sticks to it. And that can be really difficult because you end up sliding because the snow is stuck to it. So what you can do to prevent that is you can rub some universal wax into them, but don't do that unless you need to and you have older skins. One other thing, and this was Emily's tip, she was saying over and over, when you take your skins off, if you're going to be reusing them, put them inside your jacket, because what can happen is you put them in your rucksack, they might have a little bit of moisture on them that might then freeze. Now, a frozen skin doesn't stick, so you would end up just going backwards. So it's really important that if you're going to reuse the skins, so maybe you have multiple up and downs on a trip, put your skins inside a jacket to keep them from freezing. Likewise, don't go walking through bogs with your skins. Again, that will get a lot of water on the base of them. When you then step back on the snow, that water will freeze and again make it difficult for you to stick. So do look after your skins.
Yeah, I think the point about drying them is really key. Like, I mean, whenever I come back from a ski tour, I just hang mine up over the door in the, you know, like in my bedroom, like, and you know, your room temperature, like that dries them out perfectly. So yeah, it's important to maintain them. But should we move on to bindings next? So the bindings, Amanda and I have got two different types, so we are going to do show and tell, but basically the two main types of bindings, you've got either frame bindings or you've got pin bindings, which are also tech bindings. And the main thing between the two is that it's kind of ease of use versus weight. So, you know, when we're talking about those, like the really skinny ski mountaineering kind of skis, like you're going to be on little light tech bindings. But, you know, if you're just starting out or whatever, frame bindings are much easier to use because you don't need a specific boot. You can just clip your normal alpine boots. You just put them in and you put them on in the same way that you would with your normal alpine ski bindings. And then basically the whole binding moves. So I've just got a pair here. I've got them open, that didn't work so well. So yeah, so this has got the binding on it and you see the whole binding like moves up and down. So it's got a pivot point here. And so they are a lot heavier because obviously when you're walking, you're carrying this whole bit, you're picking it up and down along with your ski boot, obviously. And Amanda is going to demonstrate the pin binding and how that works.
Right, so you can see the pin binding here, that's attached to special holes in the boot, and then my whole boot just moves up and down, but it doesn't carry the frame with it as well. So it means that it's lighter.
Yeah, much lighter. So yeah, so if you are, you know, if you kind of, when you're kind of starting out and thinking about your kit, like it's quite important to kind of think about what your goals are and like why you kind of are wanting to get into ski touring. And if it's a case of, you know, you want to take a lift and then maybe skin for 20 minutes, half an hour, so you can access some really sweet powder and do some like great backcountry skiing, then, you know, like a heavier setup might be totally fine. And actually, you know, that actually might be what you want because you might want to be like properly charging it on the downhills. Whereas if you're actually, you know, you're wanting to do big journey days and you kind of, you know, you want to go like, even if you want to do like hut to hut things or things like that, and you know, where it's a lot of uphill and the skiing is maybe the kind of secondary in a way, like then you probably would actually think that, oh, maybe actually the weight saving and having fresher legs for the ski after you've, like, if you've been walking for hours, then it's definitely, you know, you do notice a lot of weight difference. But these, like the frame, so these are the frame bindings again, like they're so easy to use that, you know, it's just in terms of getting started, it's a lot easier. You know, you literally just put your toe of your boot in. In fact, I've got the other one with the boot in it. Oh geez, they're quite heavy picking them up like this. But yeah, so you're picking up your whole boot with your binding as well, and you just kind of clip into them as you would with your normal skis. Whereas the pin bindings are definitely take a little bit of getting used to when you start out with them, and they're a bit fiddly. And yeah, I mean, they definitely, yeah, a bit faffy. I've learnt that you know, got to be careful how you're taking them off. If you're in exposed terrain, probably don't throw your ski down the mountain. Not saying that I've ever done that. Also, yeah, so worth thinking about, you know, if you're using pins, you might want to think about leashes, potentially, because some of the pin bindings, it depends, because some might have brakes, like ski brakes, whereas others don't.
Yeah, because I found that was mine the other day. So if mine are in walk mode, the bindings are the binding brakes are up, so that's in the walk mode. But I can move this back to ski mode, and that pops the brakes down. So if I just clip out of the toe piece, and that's the only bit that's attached while you're walking up, I could clip out of that, and the back could still be in walk mode, and they could shoot down the mountain for sure.
Which is definitely not to be advised. I made a bit of a foolish mistake like that, where my pin bindings kind of jammed up a bit and I couldn't quite get it off, and then I got a bit frustrated and kind of jabbed at it, and it then released, and I wasn't holding onto the ski, and my ski went flying down the mountain, and I had to put my crampons on and traipse down, and luckily I found it. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend.
No, you definitely don't want to be up a mountain with one ski.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I think bindings is probably an area where like technology has really evolved a lot in the last kind of probably like 5 to 10 years, and so now like you kind of get like there's a certain brand, the binding called the shift binding, which is almost like a bit of a hybrid, like it's kind of a bit easier to use than your normal pin bindings, but it's kind of got a bit more like it's a bit more robust in the sense of if you like, you know, if the descents and the kind of free ride side is more of a focus than so I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of, it just comes down to what I said before, like your choice of your binding is going to be really strongly linked to your motivations for getting out ski touring in the first place. And yeah, I mean, I think probably I certainly started using a frame binding. Amanda, did you start?
Yeah, I started using a frame binding too, and just with my normal alpine boots for quite a few years actually, because I always thought, right, I really want to have a really nice ski down, but actually these days the ski boots that they make are good for skiing down as well. So I'm just going to have a quick chat about ski boots. So here's an example of a touring boot. And the major thing about a touring boot is it'll have something on the back that will give it the opportunity to have a walk mode. Now if I just take this out of ski mode into walk mode, got it. What that then means is this top piece is able to move back and forth because it doesn't have it jammed in. So therefore, when I'm walking, my ankle can extend as well as flex, and that just makes it much more comfortable for walking. But you do need to remember that when you get to the top and you're ready to ski down again, you want to put them back into ski mode, clipping that back section back in, because it's really important that you have the control as you ski down. And another thing about ski boots, when you're choosing touring ski boots, is that you need to make sure that they are suitable for your bindings. So I've got my pin bindings. You can see the pins that go into it here. Okay, so I've got pins on the side, pinholes on the side of my boot there. And what that allows the pin to go in, and it gives that walking mode. Now, another point just to be aware of is that with the ski boots, touring boots have grippy bits around this toe area, so they're not actually made to be used with alpine bindings, like normal alpine bindings. The reason for that is they don't have they grip rather than twist out of the toe piece. So it's just good to be really aware of that. Another thing with touring bindings is touring boots, sorry, is they tend to have a narrower toe piece here. So you just have to be aware of that if you're shifting between skis. In my touring boots, fit I'd say is really important when I'm selecting a touring boot. The reason for that is when you're walking, you've got quite a lot of movement going on in your body, and that's going to therefore move your foot quite a lot. And if you've got a lot of excess space, or if your feet are too tight, that's going to cause issues with your feet. So it's really important to make sure that they're well fitted. I just use, for my insoles and my touring boots, I just use an off-the-shelf Superfeet insole, but you can have insoles fitted. And in my touring boots, I have a Thermofit liner. I just quite like that because it's warm and light. In terms of flex for touring boots, my ones are 120, and I ski quite aggressively, and that's absolutely perfect for me. I'm 65 kilograms, so it's a bit related to weight. It would also be a bit related to height, but anywhere from 90 to 120. If you're very experienced or heavy, then 130 you could look at as well. What flex do you have in your boots, Emily?
I think my touring boots are 110, but then actually the ones that I use for like my super lightweight ones, I mean, they feel a little bit like wellies when I'm skiing on them. They don't really have much flex. They're not fun for skiing, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, and that again is kind of why, you know, like if you're comfortable in your normal ski boots, then that's what kind of why like the kind of going in starting with frame bindings is quite a good way to go. If you're coming from a kind of, you know, you're a confident piste skier or you're confident off piste and you kind of want to access kind of more terrain, then I think, yeah, it's definitely a good way to start, really.
I think when you're buying ski boots for touring, it's really, really nice to have them fitted if you can. I understand that in the moment that's perhaps not possible. However, I believe that if you were to speak with some retailers within the UK, I know that up here you'd have Ellis Brigham, you've had Tyzo, Blues, and you'd have Stone Rock and Bartlett's. These would be retailers that would stock touring boots. And what to do is get in touch with them and see if they can provide any type of a fitting service. What they may well be able to do is you may well be able to draw around your feet and send it to them, and they may be able to help you fit you boots that way.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Cool. Well, I think we've kind of spoken about our staples that we need. Oh, I guess we haven't touched on poles. I mean, poles is one that, you know, you might, whenever you're getting more into it, you might think about having telescopic poles that you can adjust the height on them, because sometimes
with that, if you're getting telescopic ones, get the clip-ins rather than the twist-ins. Because the twisty ones are more likely to go wrong than the clippy ones are a bit more reliable.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, also whenever you're starting out, like, to be honest, like I use my normal poles most of the time. Like I sometimes use my touring poles, but yeah, it's kind of, I find touring poles, extendable ones, are really useful when if you're kind of somewhere where, say, you're traversing on like quite a steep bit, then I'll have my uphill pole a bit shorter than my downhill pole, so I can kind of keep myself a bit more balanced. But yeah, I mean, in general, I probably just use my normal poles most of the time. But yeah, so I think if we I'll kind of mention like kind of clothing and things to think about, you know, when you're ski touring. I think layers is so key. Like, I mean, I'd say it probably with all skiing anyway, but I think with touring especially, because, you know, when you're going uphill, you're generating heat. Like, you know, you'll know it anytime you walk up a hill. Like, even if you think you're really cold, you set off and suddenly you're puffing and panting and sweating, you know. So it's kind of the thing that, you know, like with hill walking and stuff, you know, just kind of be bold, start a bit cold, like not start that you're absolutely freezing, but, you know, start probably a layer less than you think you want to to have on, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And just like, I mean, actually kind of like what I'm in now, like I'd probably wear like a base layer first, and then maybe like a gilet or something, like just like a bit of a warm layer, and then probably a shell on top of that, depending on, you know, obviously totally depends on what the weather's doing and stuff, but just kind of having the ability that you can kind of mix your layers up, and, you know, you've got your backpack with you, and just chucking things in. And yeah, I mean, quite often whenever you get to the top, then, you know, you've stopped working so hard, and, you know, you're going to faff around taking your skins off, putting your bindings into walk mode or into ski mode, putting your ski boots into ski mode. Like when I get to the top, first thing I do probably is just chuck on an extra layer, and especially if it's windy, if it's cold, you know. And then yeah, for the ski down, like I probably will always have like one more layer on, maybe two more layers on. So yeah, I mean, I think like sweat management is pretty key, because you don't want to be getting sweaty as you're going up, and then whenever you stop, then your sweat will get cold, and then you will get really cold. And obviously, you know, like, you know, especially if you're going into kind of more remote places and stuff, like, you know, you've kind of just got to be aware of just general mountain kind of awareness. And, you know, obviously like hypothermia is something that when we're talking about cold snowy places, it's definitely something to be aware of, and something that you don't want to succumb to. So yeah, it's just kind of starting out cold so that you're not sweating through all your layers, and then suddenly, you know, you get to the top and you start freezing. Yeah, just so even if you feel yourself start sweating, like, I mean, I definitely find it's totally worthwhile to just stop and delayer. Like as soon as I start getting too hot on the way up, like I'll stop and take a layer off. And then, you know, things like vents and stuff for your outers is like really like great. You know, if you're skinning up something and it's the sun's beating down on you and it's a warm day, you know, you might have your shell trousers on, but like if you've got zips down the side or something, just to kind of let some air in, that's pretty good. But also, you know, like when, you know, kind of when you're getting going and stuff, like you don't need to go out and buy specific kit just to get into ski touring. Like, you know, you probably have like base layers for skiing already, and, you know, you might have a fleece, you might have a down jacket, like, you know, a shell jacket. It's like, I actually find quite often I'll probably wear like as my kind of outer, if I'm skinning, then I'll probably actually wear like a thinner shell, like maybe more like what I would wear for hiking or for running, rather than what I would wear for like full on skiing all day where I'm taking chairlifts. Like just kind of thinking like, you know, lighter stuff, and also just, you know, the weight of things that you're carrying if you're lugging everything with you.
Always a consideration, but it's always good to have spare layers in your rucksack, isn't it?
Totally, yeah, that's definitely a key thing. And, you know, I think that's anytime you're spending time in the mountains, you know, it's always worth having, because the weather changes so quickly, you know, or, you know, there's an emergency, someone gets hurt, like, you know, you kind of, if you suddenly find yourself standing around, you get cold really quickly, and spare layers is very important always. Like, I mean, I probably always have like a jacket in my bag that I probably don't even intend to use. Like I'll probably have one like really warm layer that I just know it's in my bag and I probably won't use it, but it's nice to know it's there and
it's extra.
Yeah.
With you talking about sweating on the way up, I was just thinking a top tip is to not wear your goggles as you're ski touring up, because they're very likely to get sweaty inside them and therefore steam up.
Definitely that's a really good point. Yeah, even if, you know, like say you've kind of got your helmet strapped to your bag or in your bag and you've got your goggles on your head, like, yeah, just put your goggles in your bag. Sunnies on for the way up.
Very important.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think look at us talking. I knew we'd talk too much. So we'll just kind of get on to like other bits of kit that you want to kind of have and get used to and be comfortable with. So if you're going into the backcountry, then you want to think about like your avalanche kit, and the kind of the three main pieces of your avalanche kit that you always want to have if you're in the backcountry. Your transceiver. This is the thing that is going to save your life if you get caught in an avalanche. You know, when you're skiing, you've got it on, turned on, and it sends out a signal the whole time. And say an avalanche, you know, comes down the mountain and sweeps somebody in the team away, then the others can all put theirs onto search mode, and then they're going to pick up the signal that's coming from your transceiver. And so it's a vital piece of equipment. I mean, I can't stress it enough, you know. You put it on turn it on as soon as you put it on. I put mine on, literally, I'll put my base layer on and then I'll put my transceiver on, and it's on for the rest of the day. I don't turn it off at lunchtime. I turn it off whenever I get home. But you know, the key thing is like, you've got to know how to use it. Like it's all well and good just having it with you, but it's not going to do anything if you can't use it. So it's definitely worth practicing. And you know, like, you can, this is one thing, like at the moment, like, you know, you can practice like hide them around the house and things like that. It's and you know, just so when you're going out with other people, it's really important that, you know, you're checking each other at the start of the day, that, you know, you're doing a buddy test and you're checking that everyone's transceivers are working and are on, and your batteries are charged. And you know, like, I mean, I quite often would have spare batteries with me,
yeah.
but yeah, you don't want to, it's one of the things that whenever you turn it on, if your battery's not kind of 80%, I'll probably take the battery out of this and put a new one in, and, you know, keep that other battery to go into like the TV remote or something that doesn't matter if the battery goes dead on it, you know, you just, yeah. And also, you know, because obviously batteries are affected by the cold as well. So that's kind of, you know, what I'd kind of say probably, I mean, 80% is maybe a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit too safety, but
I think you can't be safe enough in these situations.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, so like Amanda's shown hers, like, you know, Amanda's one looks different to mine, like, you know, there's different types, technology moves on, but yeah, I mean, the key thing is it's that you are used to using your transceiver. So if your buddy in your group, if one of your friends gets caught in an avalanche, that you're in a position that, okay, as soon as it happens, you know, like how to get yours onto search mode, and you can go about using it. Yeah, so I don't mean to like scare anyone, but that is definitely, you know, it's such a key thing with skiing in the backcountry. And yeah, I mean, you know, as I said, this is an education session, you know, just kind of, we want to point you to more places, rather than like, we're not able to show you exactly how to use it now, but just kind of so you kind of get a picture. So then the next piece is the probe. So this is my avalanche probe. It's I think it's 2.4 meters long. When it's up, I'm gonna just take it down now. So it just goes, it's a collapsible, so I'm gonna take it down. So it just goes down, and then you just keep it in your bag. And then that just means that, you know, if somebody happens to get buried, so it just, yeah, it falls down, then, you know, you use your transceiver first to find the signal, and then whenever you're actually trying to find them, then that's when you get the probe out, once you've kind of got the lowest number on your transceiver, so you're as close to them as you can with the transceiver, then that's when you get your probe out, and you're using both hands, and you're kind of stabbing into the snow and feeling like you get the feeling within the snow. If you're, you know, if you hit a bag or if you hit your mate, it feels different to how the snow feels. And then at that point, then you get out your shovel, and that's when you start digging, and that's going to be bloody hard work. Excuse my French. But yeah, I mean, shovel, it's so it separates, and it kind of, yeah, packs down into your bag. So yeah, like, it'll be in my bag like this, and then, yeah, just shove it in. It's metal, so it's not going
That's
to,
good.
you know, like if this, like, the snow that, some of the snow that will come down in an avalanche can be like concrete, like, it's, you know, it's not your kind of picture of soft fluffy powder necessarily.
With the metal shovel, it's quite nice to rub some wax on it, some universal ski wax, and that stops snow sticking to it when you're shoveling.
Great tip. But obviously, you know, hopefully you don't want to use any of these things, but you want to have them with you, and you do want to know, and you want to know how to use them. Like, you want to practice with them, that in case you are in a situation that you end up having to use them, then you're able to use them. It's like first aid, you know, it's like, you don't want to use it, but if you have to, then hopefully you can kind of go into autopilot and know what you're doing. And then other bits of essential kit, the old trusty map and compass, and again, you know, kind of the knowledge and how to use them, and, you know, practicing a bit with them. And, you know, there's lots of great apps and stuff on phones these days, but just kind of bear in mind that obviously phone batteries aren't infallible. Cold weather affects batteries, so I mean, I personally don't really like going out into the hills without a paper map and compass. I mean, you know, there's GPS units and things like that as well, but I think maps are great. I personally use a map case, especially if I'm in Scotland, because the wind, and so I fold up my map to the area that I want to see, and I actually also attach my map case onto my bag so that if it's really windy, then it might blow out my hands, but it's not going to get blown away and leave me without that. Yeah, I mean, maps, there's loads of different types. Like this one's a French one from Chamonix. I've got a Swiss one here. I've got a UK one. I mean, just kind of, yeah, get to kind of to know your maps and you know, think about what scale you're on. So this one's a 1 to 25,000, and yeah, just so you can kind of get familiar with the map so that you know roughly what you're going to expect to see on the ground based on what you've kind of seen on the map, what you've kind of planned. And I mean, this is kind of definitely going into the once you kind of progress from beginner section, but yeah, I mean, it's yeah, good mountain kit to have. And then obviously
what else do we want in our backpack?
Yeah, so other things you might want, we've got a pile. So one of the other things, these are ski crampons. So these ones,
very important.
Yeah, so if you're, say it's been quite windy and it might be quite like hard windswept, icy kind of stuff that you're skinning on, probably not going to be in for the most pleasant skinning journey. But these are great. So that'll kind of clip on and they grip into the snow as you're going on, and they lift up like as you're moving up. Yep, so these are one type. I've got another pair here that, again, you know, it's just, yeah, they just kind of provide a bit of extra grip. And then, you know, we've mentioned like extra layers already. I personally always will have spare gloves, spare hats, or like a buff as well, you know, kind of, yeah, just kind of, if you drop your glove and it goes off down the mountain, like having a spare pair in your backpack will change your day from being like frostbite kind of, yeah, you don't want to go there. Snacks, everyone loves snacks, like, you know, that's kind of why you want to do ski touring, right? You walk uphill and then you earn all the food you can eat.
Lots of chocolate is always in my ski touring bag.
yeah, totally. Oh, I've just got a question in just about the ski crampons here, just asking if you use ski crampons together with your skins. And yeah, you do. So you'll just kind of attach these onto your skis at the same time, like whilst you're skinning. It's for the uphill, so you still have your skins on, and then basically this goes, you know, your ski is effectively where my hand is, so the crampon goes around the ski and grips in the snow, just either side of the ski. So back to other things to have in your bag, you know, water. Might want to think about, you know, depends on temperature and stuff, you know, might want to think about a flask with a warm drink. And then, I mean, I would definitely, if I'm doing kind of like longer or more remote trips, I'd have a stove with me and like fuel for the stove and a way of lighting it. Because, you know, like obviously if you're on longer trips and you don't want to carry all your water, which is really heavy, instead you can just melt snow and use that. And also, you know, sometimes like a hot drink is a big morale boost.
Oh, so much.
Yeah. And then I guess on that, like, I mean, emergency shelter is a good thing to have with you, like especially, you know, in the days that the weather's not pleasant and you want to, you know, say it's blowing a bit of a hoolie and you want to take a bit of shelter for just stopping for a snack, or whenever you're taking your skins off and getting ready to ski again, like, you know, like yeah, you can kind of, I've got like one it packs down to about that size and it can fit 4. I mean, we've had 5 of us in it quite happily before, like happily, cozily. And then, yeah, I mean, first aid kit, especially again, if you're kind of going out of the main ski area, that, you know, you're not going to get easily, like ski patrol aren't going to just be there on hand to come and rescue you straight away, like, and a repair kit of some sort. So what I quite often do is I quite often have like a bit of duct tape. I have it on my ski poles. I wrap duct tape around the top of my poles, just so that I know I've got a bit of duct tape. And, you know, actually coming back to the point that Amanda made about making sure that if you're using your skins multiple times in a day, and if you've not kept them in next to your tummy and kept them warm and they've got frozen and then they don't stick to your skis, like I've had before that we've just ended up duct taping the top of the skin on and the bottom of it on to just try and keep it on the skis. Maybe some cable ties tend to be useful as well in terms of repair kit. But I mean, realistically, like, it's just things that you can kind of bodge together some kind of repair, that you're not obviously going to carry like full spares of everything. It's just more kind of thinking like, if things go wrong, other ways that you can, and actually duct tape's great for first aid as well. Like, if you,
yes, that's true.
I kind of just think duct tape's just kind of one of my go-tos. And then, I mean, what else? Is there anything else? Maybe an airbag potentially. If you're going down the, like, once you're going down the, properly getting further into it.
Getting into it, Yeah, I don't always use a airbag for ski touring.
I personally don't have one, but it is something that is kind of on my list of things that I might invest in at some point. And there's some good videos on YouTube that you can see like why people have them, and
definitely. So we've got all of our kit in our bag, and we have our skis, got our bindings, our boots, and we're ready to go. What we need to think about then is some simple planning, and we want to start simple for sure. So what we're going to have a quick touch on is looking at some of the goals that you might want for a ski touring trip. We'll chat very quickly about a dynamic risk assessment. We'll give you some ideas of some of the mountain skills that you want to build in order to feel safe and have fun in the mountains, and look at some forecasts. But the major thing is to educate yourself and build experience. So looking at goals, Emily.
Yeah, so I think it's quite important that even before you set off, kind of when you're thinking about what you're doing, like, you've got to bear in mind that you need to be prepared to be adaptable as you're going out there. So like, I think you don't want to get too focused on being like, I'm going to go to this summit, because actually, the weather might come in, the conditions might be horrible, you might not actually want to go there when you get there. But you also don't want to, if you don't make that summit, then you want to be happy to make the decision to turn around, because the summit's not going anywhere. You can go back to it another day. It's not worth it. But also, if you do make that decision to turn around, you don't then want to be like, oh, I failed in my goal for the day and I feel a bit rubbish about myself. So I think it's quite good to kind of have like non-outcome based goals. So for me personally, like, I absolutely love spending time in the mountains. So just kind of being out there in the mountains, in the fresh air, like, that's probably always a goal for me whenever I'm setting out. So I mean, as soon as I've kind of left the car, then I've probably already slightly ticked off that goal, and I can be like, well, yeah, I got out today, and like, kind of anything else is a bonus. And I think kind of that being adaptable, it's definitely, you don't just want to have a plan A and a plan B. Like, you want to have kind of plan A, plan B, plan B, C, plan D, but not necessarily that they're better or worse than each other, but more just that you're thinking, when you're planning something, you might be like, oh, okay, cool. So the primary objective, I guess, would be that we want to go up here and have a really good day, and everyone comes home safe and has a great time. And I think that's obviously, you want everyone to be safe and have a nice time, but then you can be like, oh, it'd be great if we could go up this mountain or whatever. But then you can be like, okay, cool, but as we're coming up here, maybe if things aren't that nice, then maybe we could ski off down here, or maybe if the conditions are looking really good, then we might be able to go over there, and just kind of like thinking of a few alternatives kind of before you set off. And and this definitely comes, the more experience you get, the more comfortable you are with doing this. And that's why it's really nice if you're in a position that you can go out with people who have more experience than you, then that's, you can kind of like learn from them, but also like take responsibility to learn from them. Like, so if you're out with people who are more experienced than you, don't just kind of take a back seat and just let them lead you. Like, try and, like, I've had sometimes that it's just been really nice, like going out with friends where you can just be like, right, so what are you thinking now? Like, what you know, what's your view on that slope there, or that aspect? Like, do you think that's safe? Do you think we're good to carry on like this? Do you think we want to ski it one at a time? Like, you know, there's a lot of kind of different things to think about. And yeah, certainly kind of when you're planning, then, you know, like there's loads of different, like you can use books and things to kind of, that, you know, you can kind of find like different, I've got some books here, like this is for the oat route, which is from Chamonix to Zermatt. It's a kind of a classic hut to hut, and it gives, yeah, Amanda's got a great book there, Scottish off-piste skiing and back skiing and snowboarding. Yeah, I've got one here for Chablais, which is like the part of France where like Morzine and stuff is, and it's got loads, you know, so you can kind of just like read up different things, think about the area that you want to go to, and then kind of start looking up like options for what to do. But again, you know, it definitely kind of comes in, the more you do it, then the more goals, or like, you know, kind of the more ideas you'll have, and you know, always like speak to other people, and yeah, just kind of yeah, kind of try and think like, so like we've already mentioned, like British Backcountry is like an amazing resource, like Facebook community, and it's a lovely community, but also people share like, you know, what conditions are like and like what's good, and you know, so it's definitely worth kind of, you know, talk to other people who've been up there, like talk to Ski Patrol, like, you know, don't be afraid to kind of chat to people. And then, yeah, so I think when you're planning your trip, and also when you're on the move, like things that you want to kind of be thinking about, you know, obviously your location, like where you are, like how you're getting there, thinking about your logistics at the start and things. But then also, you know, if you're going into like more remote backcountry, you know, kind of how easy is it going to be to get a rescue if things did go wrong? You know, you want to think about like what's under the snow, like especially when you're in, like if you're in Scotland, for example, you know, a lot of the time some of the hills are really rocky and bouldery, and they'd be awful for skiing on, but then some of them are like really grassy and might not be that interesting in the summer, but actually for ski touring are probably perfect if they're like grassy, heathery, that kind of stuff. In the Alps, I guess it's a bit more, you know, you've got a much deeper snowpack normally, so kind of what's underneath the snow is less important, I guess, in that sense, but it is also important whenever you're kind of thinking about like avalanche risk and things like that. Other things to think about obviously is your group that you're out with, you know, like who you're out with, like what's their ability, what's their fitness levels, and you know, you're not just thinking about the journey up, you're also thinking about the ski down. So maybe, you know, you might have some people who are like super fit and really happy like going uphill, and they'll like trot on up, but then actually they might not be very confident skiers. And actually, you know, if you then find yourself that you've gone up something that they were happy to go up, but actually when it comes to taking off the skins and going down, then they might not have such a good time. So, you know, you just really got to kind of bear that in mind. And like anything, like in a kind of group situation like that, you know, it's the least experienced, or the kind of weakest member of the team is going to be the one that you kind of need to really bear in mind, in particular whenever you're, you know, like you don't want to, you know, your team's only as good as your weakest link or whatever, you know. So yeah, so you don't want to kind of take people where you shouldn't go or things like that. And, you know, just kind of thinking about like what else is underneath you. So, you know, say you're coming down a lovely bit, but then actually there's like a cliff band lower down, like, you know, you kind of just got to be really aware of that and make sure that you're avoiding that and not skiing over something accidentally. And also like thinking about what's above you as well. So I guess kind of, yeah, just in terms of, you know, if there's other skiers above you, if there's loaded snow above you, if there's things that could, you know, come down, like if an avalanche comes down from above you, that's not ideal. But yeah, I don't want to kind of, I definitely don't want to like scare you. I feel like I'm being a bit like, oh, risk. And yeah, I mean, this is, you know, we kind of just tried to.
But I think if you're looking at day out ski touring, avalanches are the most significant risk that you might come across anyway. However, you can minimize that risk. And so I think it's really important to do everything you can to minimize that risk of avalanches. And so a key thing is get yourself educated and keep practicing. I'm going to just touch a little bit on some of the considerations that you need to think about to help you to minimize the risk of avalanches when you're ski touring. But make sure that you never stop learning and practicing rescues and risk assessments, and most importantly, always take active measures to minimize risk, both before and during your trip. Like Emily was saying, constantly just thinking about, well, what's plan B? Is that a better option? Looking around you and thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think it's also probably worth mentioning that it's also really worthwhile reflecting on a day, like when you've come back. It's worth thinking like, okay, cool, so this happened, and it doesn't mean that things went wrong or anything, but you know, it's worth just kind of thinking and being like, is there anything that I would have done differently, and what can I take away and what can I learn from it? And also, I mean, you know, definitely sometimes things do go wrong, and hopefully it's just minor things that you don't really, but you know, kind of when things do go a little bit wrong, you can actually get a lot of learning from that. So you know, like there is definitely something to be said for kind of, you know, experiential learning and kind of going out and giving things a go, but you know, it's just trying to make sure that where you are doing that is in a kind of safe environment. So you know, like yeah, like in terms of carry on, sorry.
Because if you are in an exposed area, then you don't have that option to have experiential learning in those situations. So it is something that it's really important to reflect on all of the decisions you made. Definitely, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that comes back to that dynamic risk assessment, just in the sense of like, and I do this all the time in the hills, that I'm constantly asking myself, I'm like, what is the risk of, like, what's the consequences of something bad happening? So like, you know, even if I'm out just like hill walking or running or ski touring or whatever, I'm kind of always like, so if I fall over here, what's going to happen? And I'll be looking below me and stuff, and I'll be like, okay, cool, I'm going to slide 5 meters and I'm going to come to a stop, and that's totally fine. I might bruise my bum a bit or whatever, but you know, it's fine. And then if it's like that, then I probably won't be taking as much care with all of my movements, because I'm just like, I know the consequences of a fall or a slip are low. But if it's somewhere that actually it's like, okay, if I fall here, you know, that's a long way down, that's rocky, that's going to be really unpleasant, you know, that's where I'm being like, okay, what am I doing to minimize this risk of this fall? And like, how am I being as careful as I can that I'm not, you know, and it becomes really instinctive. Like it's not like, I just kind of find myself sometimes being like, ooh, don't want to fall here, right? Okay, just be really careful. Yeah. Whereas other times I'm like, I'll go out running and I'm like, I probably fall over on my bum. Like, I don't know. I did a run the other day and I think I fell over about 5 times in the mud, and it's just like, doesn't matter though, because I just in the mud.
So if we're looking at avalanches, then some of the considerations that you need to be aware of to learn a bit more about, because I'm just touching on them just now. So the first one is terrain. So it's not, like Emily was saying a moment ago, it's not just the terrain that you're on at that moment, it's what's above you and potentially what's below you as well that might have an impact on the risk factor in that moment. So the steepness of the terrain, and most avalanches happen between 25 and 45 degrees. That's the most common. However, a slope angle that is flatter than that, so flatter than 25 degrees, you might still get an avalanche. It's less likely, but it might still happen. And then a slope angle steeper than 45 degrees, it might still happen, but it's less common.
Yeah, and I mean that one's just because the snow's just less likely to stick there when it's that steep, really. So yeah, exactly. And I guess with the flatter things, that comes back to the what's above you, because yeah, the actual angle of the slope that you're on might be fine, but if there's something steeper above you, then that might slide and it might come down onto that less steep bit of slope. So yeah,
that's a really good point. So it's the angles of the slopes around you as well as the one that you're on. And another consideration about the train is train traps. So if, for example, you are on a slope And just down to the right of you, there is a river valley, so quite a steep little gully below you. And to the left of you, there's a slope that is steeper than 25 degrees, therefore has the potential to avalanche. And you're in quite a dangerous position, because even if that slope is quite short and doesn't have a lot of snow in it, if it was to avalanche and it pulls you down into the terrain trap, the snow will build up and you'll end up being quite deep under snow. And it doesn't take a lot of snow to do that. So it's very important to be aware of terrain traps and to avoid being above them, and avoid skiing down a slope with a terrain trap at the bottom that will gather snow up and make it quite deep suddenly. Another type of slope to avoid, if you can, is a convex slope. So it's one that goes away from you like this. And that's just because the snow is pulling apart anyway, because it's over a ridge like that, over the slope, over that convex slope. And the snow is not stuck together quite so well. We look at the conditions of the snow. So snow has lots of layers, and it's also got the layer between it and the ground. And maybe it snowed 2 weeks ago, 20 centimeters, and then it snowed last week a little bit, and yesterday a little bit more. Those snow layers will be different within the snowpack, and it will also depend on the weather in between those snow showers as to what those layers are like. And what that actually means is if there's a layer that is created and perhaps it got a bit warm and then froze again, so you've got a little bit of an icy layer, and then it snows on top of that, that snow isn't going to bind very well to that ice, and that's more likely to be a weak layer. So within a snowpack, for many different reasons, you get lots of different layers, and it's really important to therefore look at the weather on the few weeks and even months before you actually go ski touring, to be aware of the build-up of the layers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one thing, you know, kind of when you're based in a resort for the whole winter or something, you know, you get a much better understanding of the snowpack because you know what's happened with the snow throughout. And, you know, obviously, again, this is something that, you know, the more time you spend there, the more you learn. And, you know, you obviously can't know everything to start with, but it is, as Amanda says, you know, it's kind of having the knowledge that there are different layers, and the layers might, you know, some of them might kind of break apart differently. So it's just, yeah, kind of thinking. And with avalanche reports and stuff, it will say, like, if there's a weak layer, you know, it might be like, oh, 20 centimeters down, there's a weak layer in the snowpack. And, you know, it's kind of things like that to be aware of. I should probably mention, we are going to send out a little, like a document afterwards, kind of with like signposting to kind of what we use for weather forecasts and for avalanche reports and things like that. So it's kind of signpost you to more information. So yeah, I mean, obviously we're not expecting to teach you everything now. It's just yeah, there's a lot of information to digest.
And another consideration with the conditions is wind loading. So if there is wind that's coming from the northwest, so the wind is from the northwest, it's going to load the southeast aspect slopes, and that wind loading can mean that there's a lot more snow on that side, and it can break apart, and it can cause quite a significant avalanche. And you also, to do with aspects, you need to look at what the sun is doing and whether the sun is actually affecting the snow. Sometimes if the sun beats down on the slope, it can melt some of the snow. Wet snow is heavier, and so that can have a bigger impact in an avalanche possibility. Most avalanches are set off by people. Those that are significant ones that have an impact on people are set off by themselves or others. So it's good to be aware of other people on the mountain. And if you're in any type of a situation, you can actually minimize risk by spreading the load on the snow. So perhaps spreading out a little bit more. Emily mentioned that earlier. So maybe you ski one at a time. Maybe if you're ski touring, walking across a slope, that you're not sure 100% about, you want to minimize risk a little bit, then you can spread out across that slope, and it means that there's less weight on the snow and it's less likely to fall off the mountain. And always make sure if you're stopping, that you're stopping in a safe zone. For example, it's out of an avalanche path on a ridge, would be an example of something like that. And like Emily was saying earlier, always make sure that you are practicing with your transceiver. Even if you're an expert, that you've done it loads, you still practice. Often when ski instructors gather at the beginning of a season, they will get some practice in before they head off piste. And also do that regularly through the season.
Yeah, I mean, even like you know, kind of at the start of like lockdown and stuff, we were hiding them in the garden, kind of putting them in, like there was like a pile of logs and stuff, and it was like hide the transceiver in there, and just like, you know, we're just taking turns to just time ourselves and see how quickly we could find it, and just getting used to it. It's worth doing, and you don't have to be in the snow to do that. Actually, like hiding it in heather is really good, like as a kind of practice for your searching skills.
Make sure though, if you are going to be doing that you make sure that you turn it on before you go and bury it, because
very good point.
Situation practicing with people and someone forgot to turn it on and buried it, and they're like, oh, where did I bury it?
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
So one thing to keep in mind, we spoke before about phone batteries running out, if you're using them for navigation, but also a phone is your rescue. That's your way to contact the outside. So it's really important that you keep some phone battery for emergencies, and perhaps a power pack with you. There's a couple of quite good apps to help any rescue service locate you. What's 3 words or OS locate are 2 that we know of, and that's to do with whether there is an injury or an avalanche and any type of emergency, and those will help to locate you. You can tell the emergency services. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is it is so important to look at avalanche forecasts. There are a huge variety of apps and websites. Apps and websites include BAA in Scotland, Meteo Suisse in Switzerland, White Risk in Switzerland, Meteo Ski in France, and the Ski Patrol, like Emily was saying. It's really important to plan ahead and look before you go. Avalanche risk levels are one last thing to mention about avalanches, that you get a low, moderate, considerable, high, and very high. So there's 5 levels, and these are international avalanche risk levels. And just so you're aware, most avalanches that kill people happen with 3 out of 5. So I think it tends to be because people think, okay, it's not high, it doesn't say high in it, but it does still say considerable. But it tends to be that probably in a high or a very high, people are less likely to go skiing. And a weather forecast is another forecast tool to make sure that you use. Look at how the weather is going to be and be ready to turn back if that changes. And being adaptable, like we've said before, assessing the conditions as you go, and making sure that if you are at all worried about the risk being too high, then you turn around and you go back, for sure.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of tried to give an overview, I mean, obviously there's a lot to put in. I mean, there's a lot of other resources available. As I said, we've put together a little document that we'll send out. I think tomorrow it's going to come out to you, just to your email address that you signed up on. So just kind of look out for that. Maybe check your junk if you don't find it straight away. But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways of learning more. There's a lot of fantastic stuff online. There's a lot of good books. You know, you can book onto a course, you can go with an instructor. You know, there's so many ways that you can kind of get into it. Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, we definitely don't want to try and kind of scare you off trying it at all. Like, you know, we're just trying to arm you with as many, you know, kind of tools and things to think about when you're thinking about stepping out into the backcountry. I guess one of the things that yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably just worth like repeating, like, or reiterating, kind of like, you know, like it's an amazing thing to be able to do, like to go out into the mountains and kind of, yeah, like you get a much deeper kind of connection than you do when you're kind of, you know, if you're skiing in a ski area on like taking chairlifts and stuff the whole time. Like, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for earning your turns and earning your beers at the end of the day as well. Like that was actually somebody sent in a question beforehand actually that they asked if you ever take a beer with you, and yeah, I totally do. Like sometimes I'll just pop a beer in my backpack if I know that I'm gonna go, you know, I might go up and like go up with some friends, or, you know, go and watch the sunset or something, and yeah, stick a beer in your backpack, and don't have too many because that will make the ski down difficult, but there's something pretty special about, you know, having a beer at the top of the mountains. Obviously other drinks are also available, but yeah, I mean, it's I mean, obviously I hope that Amanda and I kind of showed like at least why we love it, and, you know, some of our passion for it. And, you know, the mountains they're a great leveler, they're there to be enjoyed, but obviously, you know, it's just kind of being aware of the risks that go with them. But, you know, you can just really appreciate the power of nature and the connections that you make with your pals that you go out with as well. Like, I think that's really a key thing about a fun day out.
Well, do we, if you have any questions, we have a few minutes left to take a few questions. So if you have any, please pop them into the chat and we will try and answer them if we can. So I have a question here about any tips for ski touring with children. So I would say that ski touring with children is something that would be wonderful. It would give them a real experience of being in the mountains. There are small sets of bindings that you can get. I wouldn't imagine that if you're not going far with children, that they would need specific boots. They can probably just use their alpine boots, unless you're going for longer distances. I'd always make sure that wherever you were going was going to be quite a mellow terrain, definitely to get them started.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth just kind of thinking about their skill level as skiers, because some of them are like proper little rippers and stuff, and you just, at the end of the day, you don't want to push them too hard that they're not going to enjoy it. I think it's also, you know, you as the adult with them, you need to make sure that you are very comfortable with where you are, because you don't want to be thinking about looking after yourself as much in the same way, because obviously you've got to look after them as well. So but yeah, totally get them into it, start them young.
That's true. I was ski touring recently this winter already, and I met Alan Baxter with his daughter ski touring, and that was really nice to see him out. Have you got a question that you see, Emily?
Yeah, sure. So I've got one here that oh, there's actually loads. It's great. This is awesome. So should we start by small mountains if we're a beginner to touring? Somebody's asked here. I mean, I think that's a really good question, actually. I don't think you necessarily need to be put off by the height of the mountain per se, but I think you kind of want to think about, you know, as we've mentioned, like I think when you're starting out, like it's well worth trying it using the equipment in the ski area to start with, I think, you know, or like, so like if you're in Scotland, say, I've personally gone up at Novice range and I've literally just kind of skinned up about 2 meters to the side of the piste that I've just skinned up, and then I've got to the top and I've taken off my skins when I get to the top, and I've put my boots back into ski mode and I've just skied down the piste, and it's just kind of getting used to using the equipment. And yeah, we've kind of mentioned, you know, like skinning when the resorts close. Like obviously you do have to be aware that piste bashers are not something you want to come into contact with. Definitely if you're skinning up a piste and there's a piste basher, you get off the side of the piste and you get off to the side and let them go past, and ideally
stay well away if they're on a winch.
Yeah, really watch out for that. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of but I think, you know, certain resorts, certainly if you're out in the Alps, there's some resorts that actually have like specific like ski touring, like ski de randonnée pistes and stuff, and they're fantastic. They're like the perfect place to go and kind of start. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be intimidated by the height of the mountain itself, but I guess if you are kind of going up bigger mountains and stuff, well then you kind of are thinking more about your other mountain skills that are coming into it. So
so I've got a question here asking about storing your skins in and out of season. Is it okay to keep them folded up? And the answer is yes.
That's literally how I keep mine. I mean, last time I used these I was lucky, I got to use them in May. These ones haven't been used since New Year, because my skis that they fitted got stolen, but sore point still. So
it's yeah, absolutely, you can leave them folded up, and it would
just make sure they're dry.
Yeah,
before you pack them away.
Make sure they're dry, and check that the glue still sticky before you set out on your new season.
So someone else here has asked, how much of a difference does a few centimetres in ski length or millimetres in width make as a relatively inexperienced skier starting out with secondhand gear? And yeah, I mean, I would say, to be honest, I don't think it makes that much difference. I mean, my current skis are, I think, 155, I'm sure, so I'm like 158, but my first set of touring skis were, I think, like 170, and yeah, that wasn't that pleasant when it came to doing kick turns. So that's kind of when you're on steeper terrain, because you basically will zigzag up the mountain. So the turning point of when you go from your zig to your zag, that's your kick turn, and it can be quite an awkward motion to kind of get into it, and yeah, longer skis make it more difficult. But apart from that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Amanda, would you? I don't think that it makes much difference, really.
A couple of centimeters, a couple millimeters is not going to make a difference. But I would say that 5 or 10 centimeters is making a considerable difference, and probably same that, you know, probably 5 millimeters is quite a considerable width difference.
Yeah, I think it probably also depends on like what you're comfortable, like, you know, if you come from a background where you're quite competent skiing and you're quite comfortable on like different length skis and stuff for your skiing, then it probably won't make as much difference. But if you're coming from a background that, say, you really like getting into the outdoors, you like hill walking and stuff, but perhaps you're skiing, you know, you're much more like, you're not as confident or as competent, then yeah, then maybe it does make more of a difference, I guess, in a way.
So I've got a question here. What are your recommendations for trying ski touring in the UK? Scotland, it says perhaps Scotland is the best, but are there other areas that you have tried? I've not tried any others. When there was lots of snow earlier this winter, a few weeks ago, I did see lots of people skiing in England and Wales as well as Scotland, and in Scotland away from the ski resorts as well. I think the main thing that you'd be looking for to try ski touring would be mellow, so by mellow I mean not steep slope, that doesn't have steeper slopes above it, you know, one of the things that my parents did this year, actually, my mum ski toured for the first time this winter, and she went up a track. It was a 4x4, like a Range Rover track, through a big wide open glen. So the track itself was just a little up, and all the time thinking about, as you're going, am I comfortable skiing down this, so that you're not walking up somewhere where you can't then ski down.
Yeah, I think
in Scotland the conditions can be a bit variable.
That's definitely a really good point there, actually, Amanda. Just the kind of saying, you know, if you are kind of starting out and you're not quite sure where you're going or what you're doing necessarily, I think it's definitely worthwhile doing out and back trips rather than trying to plan like a circuit. Like, I think, you know, so if you're skinning up the same part of the mountain that you're going to ski down, then you're going to know what the conditions are like, and you're gonna, you know, you can assess, like you can be like, oh, actually this snow's really unpleasant to skin on, geez, it's going to be even worse to ski on, or whatever, you know. It's just kind of thinking. So I've got a question here: how big does your rucksack end up being to carry all your gear? So I think that's good question. So I find if I'm out just doing day stuff, I can probably fit everything into a 20-litre backpack. But you know, that's like a well-packed 20-litre backpack. But if I'm going, you know, if I'm like, so when I did like the Oat Route, for example, so from Chamonix to Zermatt, you know, that's kind of multi-day, but staying in a hut. So I'm not bringing, like, I didn't need to bring like full sleeping bags, like it was like sleeping bag liner. I think I did that with a 35-litre backpack. So
not that much bigger.
Not huge, but I think again that was pretty well packed. But I mean, I find, like, you know, when you're skiing with a backpack, it affects your balance and stuff. And you know, I definitely prefer to have as small a bag as I can and have it as well packed as I can, that, you know, to try and keep the weight as close to my body, so my balance isn't being as affected as much. Like, you know, you don't really want to ski with a 60-litre expedition sack on, because you'll just be and it'd be really unpleasant for going up the hill.
Definitely, yeah, you want to be light, that's for sure. And when you've got a bigger pack, you just find more things to put in there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of actually quite often just will like limit myself and be like, I'm using this bag, so everything's got to fit in. It's the snacks that maybe get sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I don't need 3 packets of Haribo and 6 Mars bars and oh, someone's asked here about split boards. Geez, we've definitely been very guilty of being skiers, so which is like our skiers. So split boards, so that's kind of your snowboarder's equivalent to getting into well, ski touring, but splitboarding as well. So essentially what it is your snowboard splits into 2, so that whenever, and you kind of swap it over, so you have 2 skis effectively for the uphill, and they've got
bindings move
the bindings twist around and stuff. And yeah, they also asked about conversion kits and about contemplating turning an old board into a split board. I personally don't know about that or how possible it is, because I think there's, well, I mean, you kind of, the split board will have an edge on it where you wouldn't normally have it with a snowboard, obviously. So I'm afraid not a very helpful answer. But splitboarding is great. I've like actually some of my pals that I tend to do like backcountry stuff with are snowboarders, and actually like whenever they're on the splitboards, it's totally it's great. And
great. I think we've got time for one more question. You can pick it, Emily.
Oh, there's still a few that we haven't got to. When reassessing conditions or risk on the mountain, turn around and go back may not necessarily be the safest path. That is a very good point, actually. I mean, there are definitely going to be times where, say, you've come across something that you're like, oh, actually that wasn't maybe I don't want to go back across that or something, or, you know, you might have felt the snow didn't feel that stable,
or maybe a slope's heated up since you were there first time. There could be lots of reasons. I think that what you'd want to have in any planning day, planning for a day, would be some kind of emergency exit, type thing, to just think about what the options will be. So if we get to there and it's no good to go back the way we came, what are the other options? And if you have a good map, good books, you'll be able to look at that before you set out. And it also helps to have good knowledge of the area if you are going to be in areas where you can't retrace your steps.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much to everybody for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to chat about all things ski touring, and we hope that we have given you a nice insight.
Yeah, I hope it's been useful, and that you feel like you want to get out amongst it. I mean, maybe not this winter, but next year, and hopefully things are kind of getting a bit more back to normal, and just enjoy it, stay safe, and make the most of it. I hope we'll send out the slides tomorrow that kind of signpost you to some of the sources of information that we mentioned.
And thank you so much to Arc'teryx UK for hosting us. It's been a really great opportunity.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody.